In the 15th and 16th centuries, the French region of Anjou was terrorized by a series of brutal wolf attacks that claimed the lives of hundreds of people. Known as the Wolves of Anjou, these predators left a trail of death and fear across the countryside, becoming infamous in local folklore and history. This narrative explores the events surrounding the wolf attacks, the impact on the communities of Anjou, and the lasting legacy of this dark chapter in France's history.
Anjou, a historical province in western France, was a region characterized by dense forests, rural villages, and agricultural communities. In the medieval period, wolves were a common presence in the forests of Europe, and their interactions with humans were often fraught with danger. As the human population grew and expanded into previously wild areas, conflicts with wolves became more frequent. The 15th and 16th centuries were particularly challenging times for the people of Anjou. Wars, famine, and disease had weakened many communities, and the fear of wolves was compounded by the hardships of daily life. In this period, wolves were not only seen as physical threats but also as symbols of chaos and evil, often associated with supernatural forces or divine punishment.
Between the late 1400s and the early 1600s, reports of wolf attacks in Anjou began to increase dramatically. These were not just attacks on livestock, which were common, but on humans, men, women, and particularly children. The wolves of Anjou seemed to lose their natural fear of humans, attacking villagers in broad daylight and dragging victims into the woods. The nature of the attacks was gruesome. Victims were often found partially eaten, their bodies mutilated in ways that left the survivors and witnesses in a state of terror. The attacks were so frequent and deadly that they disrupted daily life, with people too afraid to leave their homes, travel between villages, or tend to their fields and livestock. The local authorities, clergy, and nobility were at a loss. They organized hunts and bounties for the wolves, but these efforts were largely ineffective. The wolves were cunning and seemed to disappear into the dense forests, evading capture time and again. The lack of success in dealing with the problem led to a growing sense of dread and helplessness among the population.
As the wolf attacks continued, the people of Anjou began to view the wolves not just as natural predators but as something more sinister. Rumors and superstition spread, with some believing that the wolves were possessed by evil spirits or were even werewolves, humans cursed to take on the form of wolves. These beliefs were fueled by the terror and despair that gripped the region. The hunts for the wolves became increasingly desperate. Nobles, villagers, and professional hunters scoured the forests, often resorting to brutal methods in their attempts to eradicate the wolves. Entire packs were slaughtered, but the attacks persisted, suggesting that there was more than one group of wolves preying on the region. The wolves of Anjou became infamous throughout France, with their reputation spreading far beyond the region. The chroniclers of the time recorded the attacks, often embellishing the stories with elements of the supernatural, which further fed the fear and fascination with these deadly predators. Despite the efforts to hunt down the wolves, the attacks continued sporadically over several decades. The persistent nature of the threat made it clear that this was not just the work of a few rogue wolves but a broader problem, likely exacerbated by environmental factors such as deforestation, the depletion of natural prey, and the harsh conditions of the time.
By the early 17th century, the wolf attacks in Anjou had finally begun to subside, likely due to a combination of successful hunts, changes in the environment, and possibly a reduction in the wolf population. However, the damage had been done. The wolves of Anjou had claimed hundreds of lives, left deep scars on the communities, and embedded themselves in the local and national consciousness. The events in Anjou contributed to the broader European fear and persecution of wolves, which led to extensive efforts to exterminate them across the continent. By the 19th century, wolves had been driven to near extinction in much of Western Europe, including France. The legacy of the wolves of Anjou lives on in French folklore and history. The tales of these deadly predators are still told in the region, often as cautionary stories about the dangers of the wild and the thin line between civilization and the untamed forces of nature. The story of the wolves of Anjou also serves as a reminder of the historical challenges that rural communities faced in balancing their lives with the natural world.
The wolves of Anjou represent one of the most terrifying and fascinating chapters in France's history, a time when the boundaries between man and beast seemed to blur, and the wild came crashing into the lives of ordinary people. The terror that these wolves inspired left a lasting mark on the region and contributed to the enduring fear and hatred of wolves in European culture. As we remember the events of those dark years, we are reminded of the complexities of human-animal interactions and the ways in which fear can shape our perceptions of the natural world.